From remnants of the past to things buried beneath the sand and more, here are some mysterious things found in the desert. Number 10. Telephone box. If you were lost in the desert, or at the very least about to head into a desert area, there would be certain things you'd expect to see, like rocks, maybe some lizards, and there would be certain things you wouldn't really expect to see, like a telephone box. Is that what they're called? Telephone boxes? I like to call them glass cases of emotion. Thanks for that one, Will Ferrell. This is a true object that is out in the desert. It can be found on the border between California and Nevada in the Mojave Desert. The telephone box was installed in the 1950s and has become a bit of a landmark in the area. It should be noted that if you are actually going to try and use the telephone box to get help, well, you can't. It doesn't work anymore. So if you're hoping it will be the thing that saves you, it's more of a mirage than a lifeline. Number 9. Kolmanskop. The town known as Kolmanskop in Namibia is what many would call a ghost town. But the reason it's an odd thing found in the desert is because it's basically become one with the desert that it's in. This place was founded by the Germans in the early 1900s due to its large diamond supply, and the population there grew because of this. By the time World War I ended, the diamonds were pretty much gone, and the people started to leave the town. When that happened, things started to change in a natural, yet sort of uneasy way. The town was next to the Namib Desert, and so when no one was around to do any upkeeping on the town, the desert sands moved in, literally. Now, the buildings in Kolmanskop are either broken or filled several feet high with sand. Because of its odd and unique standing, it's now a popular tourist attraction. Number 8. Ancient river network. At one point in time, the Sahara had more than just sand. Over time, modern technology has helped paint a better picture of what life was like in the Sahara Desert before it became a barren land. In these pursuits, such as in one in 2013, it was revealed that there was a trio of rivers that went through the massive desert, which is kind of weird to picture given the infinite amounts of sand that's there now. Timeline-wise, it's believed that these rivers were around over 100,000 years ago. What's more, it's believed that these rivers connected the southern area of the Sahara to the Mediterranean Sea, which in the process led to many green areas in which people lived. This revelation was made by a computer-simulated model in which scientists looked at the desert and simulated rainfall from ancient times to see what would turn up. While still speculation in part, there have been artifacts from the Stone Age that have turned up in areas where one of the rivers were said to be. This indicates that it was once a significant trade route at one time. Number 7. Fighter jets. In 2003, the Iraqi war was waging between the armies of the nation and the United States and its allies. One thing that became quite apparent to the United States was that while the battle on the ground was very tough, the battle in the air wasn't happening as frequently as they surmised, which was odd given the need to have superiority in a conflict like this. The US knew that the Iraqi forces had planes, so where were they? The answer was in the sand. A few months after the initial invasion of the country, some soldiers noticed a part of a plane sticking out of the sand. It was a tail fin. Not understanding what happened, the soldiers started to dig, and they found a whole plane. But not just a plane, a fighter jet, a brand new one. More digging followed, and it was discovered that 30 fighter jets had been buried under many feet of sand. Why the Iraqi forces did this was unclear. Number 6. The Desert Witch. A man was going down a desert road one night, and he spotted something with his headlights that he thought was a person. He slowed down and tried to get a better look. He found himself looking at a humanoid creature, but while it looked human, it had a weird hunch to it that couldn't be explained, and he couldn't see the person's face. He could see that the being had a woman-like form, long black hair, and a white dress on. Not something you'd wear in the desert. At first, the man let the being come towards him, thinking it could be someone who might be hurt. But as it lurched over to him, that concern turned into fear. And when he felt in danger, he raced away. When he did, the creature let out a ghastly moan, which terrified the man even more. Pictures were taken of the creature, but no one has an explanation for what happened. Some think it was a witch, but what would a witch be doing in the desert? No one really knows. Number 5. The common man's luxury boat. Ancient Egypt is renowned for their detailed and intricate ways of preserving their dead, as well as the many ways they honor them with elaborate burials. One of the more common ones was to have a transportation vehicle buried with them so that they could be ferried to the afterlife. Chariots, horses, boats, and more have been found in tombs and even common gravesites. In 2016, a 60-foot boat was found buried in the Sahara Desert, 4,500 years after it had been buried. Why is this significant? A 60-foot boat in any era is pretty massive, and at the time it was buried, it would have been about the size of an Egyptian warship. So to have that buried alongside one person, that seems like overkill. Research into it revealed that it was a true funerary boat, one of the oldest ever found, but that didn't stop the questions from rolling in. Mainly because the person buried next to this boat wasn't royalty, it was a commoner. What did this person do to deserve such a large boat? Who spent the time to make this boat for them? Number 4. Spy satellite patterns. Google Earth has allowed people to see the planet they live on in new and fascinating ways. But when some people decided to look at the Gobi Desert within China's Xinjiang and Gansu province, they noticed something they couldn't explain. There were massive lines and patterns within the ground of the desert. What's more, it was clear after observation that they were man-made patterns. However, for a time, its purpose wasn't clear, and it was crafted too perfectly to not be made for a certain intent. The answers shocked many when it was revealed. The Chinese used this pattern to help orient their spy satellites. By having these massive patterns in the ground, ones that you can see from space, the Chinese can use them to help the lens on the satellite calibrate correctly. It'll look at the pattern and try to calculate a distance that the people on the ground know the precise length of. If it calculates it perfectly, it's good to go. If not, adjustments will be made. Ironically, other nations use similar techniques, such as the United States, who have a similar pattern in the Arizona desert. Number 3. Arrows. When people in the Arizona desert started to notice giant arrows made of stone in the ground pointing to random directions, they started to wonder what was going on. Because they were stone, it was hard to determine where they came from and what they were pointing to exactly, as it could literally be pointing to anything in that direction. A town, a water reserve, a treasure, anything. These stone arrows were made to be over 60 feet long, which is rather sizable. After some research, it was revealed that these arrows were made back in 1911. Why? It was to help pilots get to their destination, specifically early mail pilots, who had to fly across the country to deliver mail to the West Coast. These arrows allowed them to stay on track and were made so large that they could be seen from a good distance up in the air. Number 2. Sea Animal Graveyard. In Chile, there is a desert known as the Atacama Desert, and in 2010, within it, a graveyard was found. Now, given the very nature of deserts and how many of them are former prosperous lands that are just dried up, a graveyard isn't too out of the ordinary. But after some road work in 2010, the diggers found themselves looking at a collection of 40 fossilized whale bones. Not only that, there were other sea life bones and fossils in the sands as well, including some from extinct creatures. These bones were found on a hill called Cerro Baena, which is exactly 120 feet above sea level. This has garnered many questions, mainly about how these sea creatures ended up clustered together in a large desert. One scientific theory suggests that the area was indeed full of water at one point, and that this hill, due to its size, was actually the ending point for the bodies of these creatures, as they were dumped there by the tides or waves, and then, mixed between the sun, sand, and wind, the bones were buried and perfectly preserved. They're now on display in museums. Number 1. Desert glass. In December 1932, a man named Patrick Clayton, who worked for the Egyptian Geological Survey, was driving through the Sahara Desert, and he heard something that didn't make sense. Despite driving on the sand, he heard a crunching sound. So he stopped the car and looked under his tires. To his surprise, he found there was glass underneath them. And not just ordinary glass, mind you, but pure glass. Glass with a yellow-green tint, and one that apparently had iridium in it. This would eventually be dubbed Libyan desert glass, and it's the purest natural silica glass ever found on Earth. But the mystery that was on everyone's minds was how this glass was formed in the Sahara Desert. After all, while it is true that sand can be turned into glass, an enormous amount of heat is required to do the process. The Sahara Desert itself cannot produce such heat on its own, enhancing the mystery. The most popular answer is that about 20 or 30 million years ago, a meteorite came to the Earth and crashed into the area that is now the Sahara, which at the time it was much more green, and the intense heat transformed the sand and other materials into glass. However, impacts from the meteors have been known to cause intense explosions upon impact, so it's within the realm of possibility. The Libyan desert glass is considered one of the most beautiful natural glasses in the world due to its yellow-green color. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these mysterious things found in the desert? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!